Good morning and welcome to our reflection on the second Sunday after Pentecost. The theme of this Sunday is one of discipleship and mission. And you may have noticed that I haven't read the whole of the lectionary reading, as I wanted us to focus on two main factors this morning. The overall heading is one of discipleship and mission. But our two headings that we're going to be looking at are commission and compassion. So, the basis of Jesus' mission was preaching, teaching, and healing. And in his commissioning of us today, those elements remain the same. So, let us have a look briefly at the reading we had this morning. We see Jesus looking at the crowd, and actually from that reading we're told that Jesus had compassion on them. Now, as a result of Jesus' compassion, there was an action, and that action was prayer. And Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out labourers." We know prayer is crucial because God answers prayers. And prayer is the action by which we express our compassion and also the means by which we begin and continue to grow in our role as disciples. So, let's have a look at compassion. Throughout the Gospel, the writers draw our attention to the fact that Jesus has compassion on a number of occasions on those around him. Matthew in particular tells us that Jesus normally has compassion on people when they are hungry, they're in pain, sorrowful, sick or alone. And Matthew stresses particularly that Jesus' compassion was noted before he fed the crowd and when he saw two blind men who he healed. Now, Jesus' view for us today as he looked at that crowd this morning, he felt that they were harassed, helpless, bewildered, exhausted, and probably a little bit neglected by those who should be caring for them. Jesus then refers to the crowd as sheep without a shepherd, which is reflected in the psalm that we read this morning. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. If we look again at the reference to the shepherd, we can see that this is no ordinary shepherd. This is a shepherd who is willing to give his life for his sheep. And this shepherd is the one who goes out to find that one sheep to bring them back to the 99. And if we look again at the passage, we may note that there was a real impact that this crowd had on Jesus. But what really brought it home to him was the urgency and the need because of the lack of resources. The harvest is ready, it is ripe, it is crucial for it to be gathered in at this time. Jesus looks around him and there doesn't appear to be enough workers. I think in our situation today, we can think about times when we've heard where the need is urgent, but there are no resources to meet that need. So, to the commissioning, the need was so great that Jesus could not meet that need alone. So he called people to help him. And of course we know that Jesus wouldn't ask us to do something that he would not do himself. So he calls his disciples and he gives them the authority to actually go out, to preach the good news, to teach, and also to heal. And then he sends them out. He says, here are my instructions. I want you to proclaim the good news. I want you to preach that the kingdom of heaven has come. I want you to care for the sick. I want you to raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, and cast out demons. Now, you're going to do all this without payment, because you've received it without payment. So do likewise. He also says that you will encounter rejection. He says if you do, you walk away. But you're also going to have acceptance. And if you are accepted, you leave your peace behind. Now in our commission, in the word commission comes the word mission. And most of our churches today have mission statements. And no doubt, you're all nodding now as I'm about to say that you review these mission statements once a year to make sure that you're on track. And of course, you need to ask yourself that question, what it is that we are here as a church to do. And I do hope that your answer is to create more disciples. Now, even Jesus himself had to review his mission statement, because when he first gave his instructions to the disciples, he told them to stay away from those villages in Samaria. Don't go anywhere near them, because we have come for the people of Israel. Further on in his ministry, what happens? The disciples come along one day, they'd gone to buy lunch, they come back and they find him talking to a woman by the well who's a Samaritan. And suddenly they have to reconsider their mission, because Jesus has realized that there's an opportunity here that his mission goes out to the wider world. They have a fantastic discussion. Jesus says it doesn't matter who worships where. The most important thing is that we worship the Father in spirit and in truth. So, in conclusion, in our society today, there are a lot of people out there saying that they're hoping that something good will come out of this awful situation in which we find ourselves. And I think you would all agree that COVID-19 is a life-changing experience. And I'm hoping that we don't go back to our old ways, because I do believe we have changed. We have got to know our neighbours, we have seen more kindness, but of course when we look across the world, especially over the last few weeks in the United States, we realise that there is still a lot of work to do, especially around racial justice. But as Christians, no matter how bad things may get, there is that hope that can transform and that can make a difference. So, Jesus talked to his disciples and he showed them how compassion works. He commissions each one of us today equally to reach out to those around us. Now, I know that we're in lockdown and that's a bit difficult, but in light of the lockdown, we've developed new habits. For instance, our pastoral care has now become a telephone support system, an email system. So there are ways in which we can physically reach out for people through the telephone and through our electronic systems. In fact, it has been recorded that there has been a 35% increase in people purchasing the Bible. Our very own Dr. Rowan Williams, previous Archbishop of Canterbury, says that he feels that this pandemic has triggered a historical spiritual moment. I'd like us to consider this morning that this spiritual moment could be our harvest. And I want us as disciples to listen to the commission that Jesus has given each one of us and to have that compassion in our hearts to look at whether or not this moment is our moment of harvest. And don't forget, we're still part of that community that were once together on that day of Pentecost when the Holy Spirit empowered us. We have been commissioned, and we need to pray for the Lord of the harvest. This is our harvest time. People in our society today are crying out for answers. They're looking for a solution. They're, in some cases, looking to find God. And as disciples, we need to go out, take up our commission, and with compassion in our hearts, begin to reap that harvest. This story has no end. It will continue in the lives of you and me. And as we reach out, may God continue to bless you all as we work together through this harvest time. Amen.